Well, let's move on to China-Japan relationship here. The ties between the two countries have been on the decline recently, with military incidents at sea, sharp diplomatic language, and controversial comments about Taiwan by Japan's new prime minister. Also, Tokyo is reportedly set to raise military spending to a record 9 trillion yen, roughly $58 billion in 2026, and is talking more openly about what it would do in the Taiwan crisis. What's driving this surge in military budget, and where are China-Japan relations headed? Joining us in the second half of the show is journalist and geopolitical analyst KJ Noh. Welcome to the show. KJ, Japanese media report that Japan's defense budget is planned to reach a record high, as I said, 9 trillion yen in the new year of 2026. Kyodo News reports that this budget will be allocated for the acquisition of long-range missiles and offensive drones, as well as expenses related to the realignment of U.S. forces. How do you view this new development? Can we? Okay, seems like we needed to reconnect there with KG. Rong Ying, Professor Rong Ying, how do you see this latest development, and what do you think this record defense budget signifies?
Well, definitely it is a serious development in terms of not only, I think, the defense strategy, defense posture, but raise a serious question about the strategic directions of Japan in terms of the question of whether Japan will continue to pursue a pacifist sort of policy, or whether I think go along the different road which would allow the revival or the resurgence of militarism. And we know that I think the rise of Japan's military budget is not the first time. I think we have seen over the past 13 years, for 13 consecutive years, Japan's budget has been rising. Now, I think it has reached to the level, I think, only second to the United States, which means I think the second largest in Western countries. That is very much, I think, a serious development, and raise many questions about the directions. And also, as you rightly said, that not only I think the budget is rising, but its posture is also changing. Instead of pursued, it's a so-called exclusive defense-oriented policies. It has a lot of changes in terms of development or pursuit of offensive capabilities, and also it takes place in the context where there are proposed changes to the national security strategy, national defense strategy, and also I think the proposed revise of the three lot of related strategies. For example, the 3 non-nuclear principles, and also principle related the defense sort of export, and so on and so forth. So if we put it together, we have a very serious and accelerated development on the question of Japan's defense posture, defense strategy, and the only question is what Japan is up to.
Now, of course, countries like China, like South Korea, and other Asian countries, with the history during World War II being brutally ruled or invaded by the Japanese militaries. Of course, people are very much concerned with the new development. Warwick, I think is closely related to the development. The the new prime minister of Japan, Sane Takaichi, it has been some time. She talked about the Taiwan crisis, saying that that could qualify as a survival threatening situation for Japan, even if itself is not attacked. That raises the question of whether Japan could assist the U.S. and collective self-defense in the Taiwan scenario. Under Japan's 2016 security law, the right to collective self-defense can be invoked if a conflict involving a close partner threatens Japan's survival. So in any sense, what she talked about is like, Japan will send basically military forces to intervene, something as an internal matter of China. Of course, from Beijing's perspective, that's a threat, military threat from Tokyo. And given the background of who Takaichi is, she's not by me, described by AP, Associated Press, as ultra-conservative revisionist, meaning she denies the Japanese aggression, brutal aggression of neighboring countries, including China. She sees that as a defense, self-defense. So, of course, people are very much concerned when remarks like that out of her mouth right there. And so what do you make of all this development here?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, she certainly comes from the hard right edge of the Japanese body politic, and she is clearly, in many regards, dancing to that political tune. The concerns, of course, are twofold. One relates to the strategic posture that is being revised and the extent to which Japan may or may not become part of a military engagement together with America in relation to China's domestic matters concerning Taiwan. And secondly, there is a longer historical view, and that goes to not only concerns around Japanese militarization in the past. Let's not forget this is the 88th year celebrating or recognizing Japanese atrocities in the massacre in Nanjing. But it also potentially points to Japanese ambitions that will shed Japan's post-war pacifist constitution and reorient Japan not only in relation to the question of Taiwan, but more concerningly for everyone else in the region, the revitalization of Japanese militarism and its aggression towards Southeast Asia more generally.
KG Nor, as an observer, a close observer of the Japanese development, are you concerned with this rather less assertive stance in terms of Taiwan, in terms of military development of the Japanese government?
Absolutely. Well, we know that Japan was put in the penalty box because it was extraordinarily militarist, extraordinarily violent all over Asia. It essentially committed genocide all over Asia, certainly against China. And so for China, when Japan speaks, essentially invokes a casus belli term, allowing it to wage aggressive war against China, we have to take this very, very seriously. We have to understand that this is really a major escalation. Essentially what Prime Minister Takaichi has said is that Japan is setting its defensive perimeter all the way to Taiwan. And that is something that is completely and totally unacceptable. The other thing that I'll point out is we have to think of this in conjunction, as the other speakers have pointed out, with Japan's massive militarization. Remember, the United States is now selling $2.3 billion of Tomahawks, 400 Tomahawks. It is selling joint air-to-surface standoff missiles, $900 million worth of those. It is selling $3.64 billion worth of air-to-air missiles, as well as a $2.2 billion missile defense system. So there is this massive expenditure on what are clearly very, very aggressive systems in conjunction with the neutralizing of its peace constitution, its Article 9, as well as these belligerent statements that essentially extend Japan's defense perimeter all the way to China's sovereign territory.
Rong Ying, if you look at the latest tension surrounding the sea incident, let's say, and last week, as China was carrying out military drills in the international waters, Japan accused the Chinese side of locking radar onto Japanese military. Japan also claimed China had sent no prior notice of China's drills, but later retracted this statement admitting they had received information beforehand. Of course, that's after the Chinese side published, there's a video recording of what happened between the two militaries there. What do you make of the Japanese, here, basically, speaking something untrue, accusing Chinese side of something untrue, and the end done there. They didn't do. What's the purpose here?
That's exactly the reason why we need to be guard against and keep a vigilance about the development of the militarization or the danger of the revival of Japan's militarism. And it is true, if you look at the history of Japan, in modern history, Japan has made up and capitalized every chance to launch a kind of aggression or surprise attack by man-made, by looking for excuses. I think the incident of the so-called radar locking up or do whatever. Now it's known very clear. The Chinese vessels, the Chinese aircraft carrier was done a kind of a normal exercises and have given advance notice, and which was recognized, acknowledged by the Japanese side. Mm-hmm. And this is an exact case where the Chinese say that a thief posing as the judge and crying for catch and thief. The risk is that if that trend goes on, of incident like that goes on, it can either lead miscalculation or interpretation. But it can also very much to lead to incident where the give the excuse for Japan or this Japanese militarism to launch a kind of attack, which will cause disaster for peace and stability in the region and beyond.
Yeah, the last question for KG No. Takeyachi is also, being reported that she's likely to visit the Yasukuni Shrine in late December. What do you make of that?
Well, Yasukuni Shrine is where Japan's war criminals are worshipped. It literally, the spirit, the kami of Japan's war criminals are considered to be enshrined there. And there are, of which there are over 1,000 war criminals. These were convicted and charged with Class A or B war crimes. So it is an extraordinary statement, because originally the conception of Yasukuni Shrine was used as a symbolic motivator for soldiers and those who pledged a loyalty would martyr themselves for the Japanese emperor.
Well,
so for a politician to go there,
stop there. That concludes our show. Many thanks to our guests. Thank you for being with us. See you next time.